There's a moment that happens to all of us. Someone says something cutting, and suddenly your entire day shifts. A rejection lands in your inbox, and your confidence crumbles. A disappointment hits, and you find yourself spiraling for hours, maybe days. You probably tell yourself you shouldn't care so much, that you're being too sensitive. But here's what nobody tells you. The problem isn't that you care. The problem is that you've never learned how to build a mind that can withstand impact. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But what if I told you there's something even more powerful? What if you could build a mind so strong that the how doesn't shake you in the first place? Most people misunderstand what it means to have a strong mind. They think it means feeling nothing, becoming emotionless, building walls so high that nothing gets in. You've probably met someone like this, or maybe you've even tried to become this person yourself. Cold, detached, nothing bothers me. But here's the truth. That's not strength, that's numbness. And numbness isn't protection, it's prison. When Nietzsche talked about strengthening the mind, he wasn't talking about killing your emotions. He was talking about something far more sophisticated. He was talking about becoming someone who experiences everything but is controlled by nothing. Someone who feels the punch but doesn't fall. Someone who hears the criticism but doesn't collapse. Think about the strongest people you know. Not the ones who pretend nothing hurts them. The real ones. The ones who've been through hell and somehow came out more solid, more grounded, more unshakable. They didn't get there by feeling less. They got there by processing more. And here's where it gets interesting. Your mind right now is probably operating on a default setting. A setting installed by your childhood, your culture, your pain, your fears. You react to things automatically. Someone raises their voice and your heart races. Someone ignores your text and anxiety floods in. Someone questions your ability and doubt takes over. These aren't choices you're making. These are programs running in the background. And the first step to building an unshakable mind is recognizing that these programs exist and that you have the power to rewrite them. Nietzsche had this radical idea that most people completely miss. He believed that the way to become stronger wasn't to avoid difficulty. It was to voluntarily choose it. Not masochism, not self-destruction, but deliberate, chosen challenges that forge you into something harder to break. He called this Amor, Fati, the love of fate. But it goes deeper than just accepting what happens to you. It's about actively seeking the friction that shapes you. Here's what this looks like in practice. Right now, you're probably avoiding certain conversations because they're uncomfortable. You're probably dodging certain challenges because they might expose your weaknesses. You're probably taking the path of least resistance because, well, it's easier. But every time you do this, you're training your mind to be weak. You're teaching yourself that discomfort is dangerous, that difficulty should be avoided, that the goal of life is to feel comfortable. And then life hits you with something you can't avoid, a loss, a failure, a betrayal. And your mind, which has been trained only in comfort, shatters. The alternative? Start choosing your hard things. Have the difficult conversation before you're forced to. Take on the project that scares you. Put yourself in situations where you might fail. Not recklessly, but strategically. Because here's the secret. When you choose your suffering, it becomes training. When suffering chooses you, it becomes trauma. The difference is control. The difference is intention. Think about physical exercise. When you lift weights, you're literally tearing your muscle fibers. You're causing damage. But that damage, when chosen and controlled, makes you stronger. Your mind works the same way. Controlled exposure to difficulty creates resilience. Uncontrolled exposure creates wounds. Now we get to something that will probably make you uncomfortable. Nietzsche believed that most people are weak, not because they lack strength, but because they're measuring themselves by the wrong standards. They've inherited a value system that was designed to keep them small, controllable, and dependent on external validation. You've probably noticed this in your own life. You measure your worth by how many likes you get, how much money you make, whether people approve of your choices, whether you fit into the boxes society has created. And every single one of these measurements gives other people the power to affect you. Because if your value is determined by external factors, then every external factor becomes a potential threat to your stability. Here's what Nietzsche would tell you. You need to perform what he called a reevaluation of all values. You need to sit down and seriously ask yourself, what do I actually value? Not what I was told to value, not what society values, not what would impress other people. What do I, at the core of who I am, actually care about? This is harder than it sounds because you've been conditioned your entire life to want certain things: success, status, approval, security, and maybe you genuinely want these things. But maybe you've never questioned whether you want them or whether you just think you're supposed to want them. When you clarify your actual values, the things that matter to you independent of anyone else's opinion, something powerful happens. Suddenly, most of the things that used to affect you lose their power. Someone criticizes your life choices? Irrelevant, because they're measuring you by their values, not yours. Someone calls you a failure? Meaningless, because you're defining success differently than they are. This doesn't mean you become arrogant or dismissive. It means you become anchored, rooted in something solid that can't be shaken by every opinion that blows by. One of the most practical tools Nietzsche gives us is this idea that every event, every situation, every supposed disaster contains multiple interpretations. And the interpretation you choose determines whether that event weakens you or strengthens you. Let's say you get rejected from something you really wanted: a job, a relationship, an opportunity. Your default interpretation is probably something like, this proves I'm not good enough. This is a failure. This is bad. But here's what a Nietzschean perspective shift looks like. This rejection is information. It's telling me either that this wasn't the right fit or that I need to develop in certain areas. Either way, it's useful. Either way, it's redirecting me towards something more aligned with who I'm becoming. Notice what happens when you shift the interpretation. The event hasn't changed. The rejection still happened, but its effect on you has completely transformed. In the first interpretation, you're a victim. In the second, you're a student. And this applies to everything. Every criticism can be seen as an attack or as data. Every failure can be seen as proof of inadequacy or as a necessary step in learning. Every loss can be seen as pure tragedy or as an opportunity to discover what you're made of. The untrained mind accepts the first interpretation that appears. The strong mind recognizes that it has a choice, and that choice determines everything. Start practicing this actively. When something happens that typically affects you negatively, pause. Don't just react. Ask yourself, what are 3 other ways I could interpret this situation? You're not being delusional. You're not pretending bad things are good. You're recognizing that reality is complex and that you have more power over how events affect you than you've been using. Nietzsche had this thought experiment that's simultaneously terrifying and liberating. He asked, what if you had to live your exact life again? Every moment, every choice, every pain, every joy, on infinite repeat, forever. For most people, this thought is horrifying, because they're living a life they wouldn't choose to live again. They're making choices out of fear, obligation, or habit. They're enduring rather than engaging. But here's how this thought experiment strengthens your mind. It forces you to confront whether you're living a life worth repeating. And more importantly, it gives you a filter for every decision you make. Before you react to something that typically affects you, ask yourself, If I had to repeat this reaction infinitely, would I choose it? That moment when someone cuts you off in traffic and you spend the next 30 minutes angry, would you choose that 30 minutes of anger on infinite repeat? That day you waste spiraling about something you can't control, would you choose that spiral eternally? When you use eternal recurrence as a filter, you start to see how much of your suffering is optional, how much of what affects you is actually just a habit you've fallen into. And once you see it's a habit, you can change it. This principle also works positively. It helps you identify the things worth doing, worth feeling, worth experiencing. The conversation that's difficult but necessary. The risk that's scary but aligned with your values. The moment of vulnerability that could lead to connection. If you choose these things on infinite repeat, then they're worth doing now, regardless of the outcome. Remember that quote from earlier? He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. This might be Nietzsche's most practical insight for building an unshakable mind. When you have a strong enough purpose, most obstacles become irrelevant. Not because they don't exist, but because they're small compared to what you're moving toward. Think about a time when you were completely absorbed in something meaningful, a project you cared about, a goal that mattered to you, a person you were helping. In those moments, did you notice how little things that normally bothered you just didn't? Someone's opinion didn't shake you. A minor inconvenience didn't derail you. A setback didn't destroy you. Because you were oriented towards something bigger than your immediate comfort. This is the secret most people miss. They try to strengthen their mind by building defenses, walls, armor. But Nietzsche is telling you to do the opposite. Don't build walls. Build a purpose so compelling that you don't need walls. When you're moving towards something meaningful, criticism becomes feedback. Failure becomes a learning experience. Pain becomes a cost you're willing to pay. Not because you're superhuman, but because you're connected to something that matters more than your comfort. And here's the thing. This purpose doesn't have to be saving the world. It doesn't have to be something grandiose. It just has to be genuinely meaningful to you. Maybe it's creating something. Maybe it's developing a skill. Maybe it's building something with your own hands. Maybe it's becoming the kind of person you respect. The specific purpose matters less than the presence of purpose, because purpose transforms how you relate to everything else. It turns obstacles into challenges. It turns setbacks into plot points in a larger story. It turns suffering into something that has a function, a reason, a place in the narrative of who you're becoming. Nietzsche had this idea he called self-overcoming. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about continuously transcending your current limitations, your current fears, your current weaknesses. Most people reach a certain level of comfort and then stop growing. They find a version of themselves that works well enough, and they defend that version against anything that might challenge it. Someone suggests they're wrong about something, and they get defensive. A situation requires them to step outside their comfort zone, and they retreat. An opportunity for growth appears, and they make excuses. This is how minds become fragile, not through catastrophic events, but through years of stagnation, through years of protecting a fixed version of yourself instead of allowing yourself to evolve. The alternative is to adopt what Nietzsche called the mindset of self-overcoming. You wake up not asking, how can I stay comfortable? But where am I still weak? Where am I still limited? What version of me needs to be transcended? This sounds intense, but it's actually liberating. Because when you're constantly outgrowing yourself, nothing can permanently affect you. Someone insults you? That's the old version of you they're talking about. Something triggers your insecurity? That's a signal showing you exactly where you need to grow next. You start to see everything as information about your development rather than as attacks on your identity. Because your identity isn't fixed, it's constantly evolving. And evolution requires leaving behind what no longer serves you. Here's a practical way to apply this. Identify one area where you feel weak right now. Not your biggest weakness, just one specific area. Maybe you're conflict avoidant. Maybe you're bad at maintaining boundaries. Maybe you give up too easily when things get difficult. Now, instead of defending that weakness or hiding it, deliberately put yourself in situations that challenge it. If you're conflict avoidant, initiate a difficult conversation. If you're bad at boundaries, practice saying no. If you give up easily, commit to seeing one thing through, even when it gets hard. Each time you do this, you're practicing self-overcoming. You're proving to yourself that you're not fixed, that you can change, that who you were yesterday doesn't determine who you are today. Here's something most people get wrong about building mental strength. They think they need to constantly be around others, constantly be productive, constantly be doing something. But Nietzsche understood that real strength requires solitude. Not loneliness, solitude. In solitude, you confront who you actually are without the distraction of other people's opinions, expectations, or energy. You can't hide from yourself. You can't perform. You can't pretend. It's just you facing you. This is uncomfortable for most people because they've built their entire sense of self around external feedback. They know who they are based on how others react to them. Strip away the audience, and they're not sure what remains. But this is exactly why solitude is essential. It forces you to develop an internal sense of self that doesn't depend on constant external validation. It teaches you to be comfortable in your own presence. It allows you to hear your own thoughts instead of just echoing others' opinions. Start creating intentional periods of solitude, not just being physically alone, but being truly alone without your phone, without distractions, without anything to hide behind. Even 30 minutes a day makes a difference. In this solitude, practice reflection. Ask yourself, what affected me today? Why did it affect me? Is this something I want to keep being affected by? Don't judge yourself for the answers. Just observe them. Notice patterns. Notice what triggers you. Notice what gives you peace. This practice builds what Nietzsche called intellectual conscience. It's the habit of being rigorously honest with yourself about what's actually going on in your mind and why. And this honesty is the foundation of everything else. Because you can't strengthen a mind you don't understand. Nietzsche had this concept that sometimes things need to be destroyed before they can be rebuilt stronger. Not destruction for its own sake, but creative destruction, the necessary breaking down of what's weak or outdated to make room for something better. This applies to your own mind and life. There are probably beliefs you hold that need to be destroyed, habits you've maintained that need to be broken, relationships that need to be ended, parts of your identity that need to be let go. And this is painful. Your mind resists it because letting go feels like death. In a sense, it is death, the death of a version of you, but it's also the only way to birth the next version. Most people avoid this process. They hold on to beliefs that no longer serve them because the beliefs are familiar. They maintain habits that hurt them because change is scary. They stay in situations that drain them because leaving feels too hard. But an unshakable mind requires the courage to destroy what needs to be destroyed. To look at your life and say, this isn't working anymore. This version of me isn't strong enough for where I'm going. Something needs to change. Here's how to apply this. Identify one thing in your life that you know, deep down, needs to end. Maybe it's a belief like, I need everyone to like me. Maybe it's a habit like constantly seeking external validation. Maybe it's a pattern of behavior like people-pleasing at the expense of your own needs. Now, instead of just trying to stop it, deliberately destroy it. If it's a belief, actively challenge it every time it appears. If it's a habit, remove everything that enables it. If it's a pattern, do the exact opposite when the situation arises. This is creative destruction. You're not just trying to gradually phase something out. You're actively dismantling it to make space for something better. So here's what all of this comes together to create. A mind that experiences everything but is controlled by nothing. A mind that feels deeply but isn't shaken by every feeling. A mind that engages fully with life but isn't destroyed by life's inevitable difficulties. This isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming emotionally sovereign. You feel what you feel, but you're not at the mercy of those feelings. You respond to situations instead of just reacting to them. You choose your interpretations instead of accepting the first one that appears. You've built this strength through voluntary suffering, choosing your hard things, through revaluing your values, defining what actually matters to you, through perspective shifting, recognizing you have choices in how you interpret events, through eternal recurrence, living a life you'd choose to repeat, through meaning, connecting to purposes bigger than comfort, through self-overcoming, continuously transcending your limitations, through solitude, developing an internal foundation that doesn't need constant external validation, through creative destruction, letting go of what no longer serves you. And the result? Things that used to devastate you now just inform you. Criticism that used to crush you now just shows you where others are operating from. Failure that used to define you now just redirects you. Loss that used to destroy you now just deepens you. You're not pretending these things don't hurt. You're not numbing yourself to experience. You're integrating everything into a larger framework of growth and meaning. You're becoming someone who can hold complexity, embrace paradox, and remain stable in instability. This is what Nietzsche meant by becoming stronger. Not harder, not colder, stronger, more resilient, more flexible, more unshakable. The mind you have right now is the result of years of conditioning, habit, and reaction. It's been shaped by fear, by pain, by the need to protect yourself from a world that felt overwhelming. But that mind doesn't have to be permanent. You can rebuild it deliberately, intentionally, piece by piece. Start today with one practice. Choose one area where you feel too affected by external circumstances. Apply one of these principles. Shift one interpretation. Choose one difficult thing. Question one inherited value. Create one period of solitude. And then do it again tomorrow. And the next day, not perfectly, not without struggle, but consistently. Because building an unshakable mind isn't about one dramatic transformation. It's about small, repeated choices that compound over time. It's about training yourself, day by day, to become someone who can withstand what life brings without breaking. Nietzsche once wrote, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." But there's a hidden condition in that statement. It only makes you stronger if you engage with it consciously, if you learn from it, if you use it as material for your own development. Everything that happens to you is neutral until you interpret it. Everything that affects you is an opportunity to practice becoming less affected. Every challenge is a chance to prove to yourself that you're stronger than you thought. You already have everything you need to build this mind. You just have to begin, not when you feel ready, not when circumstances are perfect. Now, with what you have, where you are. The unshakable mind isn't waiting for you somewhere in the future. It's built in the present moment, through the choices you make today, through the suffering you choose, through the values you define, through the perspective you adopt, through the meaning you create. So build it, one choice at a time, one challenge at a time, one moment at a time, until the day comes when you realize that what used to control you no longer can. Not because you've become emotionless, but because you've become something far more powerful, truly, deeply, unshakably free.